you guys. I am not an expert in Git. First, this is a disclaimer that I am going to give. Let me, good, the timer hasn't started yet, so I have more time. Okay, so I will try to, finish it within the time given. Can I pause it? Just check on it. How many of you, I just want to have a raise of hand, like, is there anyone who have ever heard of Git except Therap guys? Like, yeah, great. Like, what is Git? And you can see a snapshot of our code base over here. That is a snapshot of original Therap's code base. It's intentionally small so that you cannot read the details. So let me go to the next. Okay, so why the name is Git? Git was developed in April of 2005 by Linus Torvalds himself. It was developed to maintain the Linux kernel source code base. And as everybody blames Linus for naming Linux after his name, that's why Linux says like, I'm an egotistical beep beep beep, and I name all my projects after myself. First Linux, now Git, because everybody, like people who don't like Linus tells he's a Git or he's lunatic or whatsoever, because he's very rude in his communications. So that's why he named this project Git, to after his name again. So what I'm not going to talk about, I'm not going to talk about how to use Git or the internal implementations of Git, because you can easily go to the web and find those. Those are readily available at this HTTP site over here, git.or.cz. So what I'm going to talk about is, like at Therap, we were having some problem with our source control management system, and why we chose Git rather than choosing any other source control management system. And I will try to look back into our decision after using Git for some major releases. So going back to the history, let me look through like what are the first SCM we used at Therap. It was back in 2002 to 2003 time. During that time, we used to use SCCS. That was a source code control system. It was mainly used for proprietary Unix systems. But like all our developers over here, they love Linux so much that we tried to use. We always use Linux as our developers' desktop, and we tried to switch from SCCS to CPS later on. And our days with CPS is the major flaw that we found with CPS is the atomic commits. Like we had to commit to our US-based repository over there, and like at that time, even now the internet is not that much reliable. So when we are doing some commits into our US repository, if there was a break in our commit, like there will be much hassle to fix those commits. Oh, time is flying by. No, why not SVN? Because we didn't actually rely on SVN, because SVNs relies on two type of storage system. One is a Berkeley DB type, another is FSFS, and now they're discontinuing one of their types. So we thought like we wouldn't trust SVN with like our lifeline, the source code itself. Then we chose to decide TLA or GNU Arch. Why we chose it? Because it supported distributed repositories, so that we can have a repository right here in Bangladesh and another repository in US, and we can replay the changes of our Bangladesh repository easily on our US side. I'm going quickly because time is flying by. And as our growth continued, we found that at the, it's like lastly, it was around last year, we found we have around 600,000 lines of codes, and total number of files were, like more than 5,000 numbers of files in our Therap core database. And we found that TLA was aging, and in other way we can call it GNU Arch, the same source control management system. It was aging, and when we tried to commit during the end of a release, it was taking so much time, and it was really testing our patience with, it was going very slow and taking huge amount of space. So we needed a better SCM. We did some R&D to find out which SCM we can converge into, and Linus Talk and Google Tech Talk inspired us, and we chose to try it out. Starting in the first week, everything seems like a problem. Developers didn't want to do it. I think many developers over here, they would agree like they didn't want to do it. But in the middle of the second week, some best practices evolved, and we found that like if we follow these best practices, lots of our problems can be resolved. Git is very fast compared to any other source control management that we have used. It is distributed. Distributed means like each on, say like we have around 32 developers at Thera. All these developers has the same copy of the core repository, so it's well backed up and it is reliable. I have 1 more minute. Okay. So branching, will that sound continue? So the branching is Git. Okay. Another thing is like if Git promotes the developers in little teams to do branches and experimental branches. If they like it, they can merge it to the main source code. If they don't like it, they trash it. Nobody knows. And the fabric of the Git itself, it's my belief that it really goes into the developmental methodologies of agile development, so that Git's development is based on trust network. I believe like most of us over here who do agile development are also does some sort of trust-based development. So I trust my source leads, and those source leads trust those developers, and in such way we can get a like good snapshot of the code repository. I think yeah, that's it. I'm done.
When you're standing beside Mozammel, you really feel like a Git. Okay, so, all right, good, nice speech. Git is something that many of us haven't heard of, but you actually gave a good overview of it. So, Q&A. Question from the front bench.
Hey, that's a good idea. Okay, so my first question. In some version we actually follow some standard layout, we follow the tags, drag, and branch. So in Git, it's actually every change or whatever you're building, everything is a branch, right?
Yeah, it's like the main thing you have itself is a branch. Branch is very native in
So
it.
it's a multi-branch and distributed branch.
It is like there are multiple branches. All are same for Git.
So
like
how you actually, in Subversion of what we do, like what we had a big problem, like when you have a different branch, and when you're going to merge them, the main problem is like, diff is not merging point, right? You have to do a lot of merge manually. So it's happened. So what? How the GIT, just Git solve that problem?
Git is very efficient in merging. Git deals, as I said, it deals with content, not individual files itself. So as it deals with contents, the internal details of Git helps it to do a more efficient merge in a much more quicker way. So like in the long run, this is directly from Linus's one of his his videos in Google Tech Talk. He said like he can merge 22,000 files in 10 seconds in the Linux kernel with Git, which previously was almost impossible for him to do it. So as branching is very native to Git, merging is also a native. It transcends the total development culture to a different level. Say in Subversion, when we want to branch, we think twice whether we really need a branch, or it's not native to Subversion to have a branch and then merge it into the core software. But in Git, what we do is like each developer can have their own branches. For example, branches can be named as name of a function. I am fixing this bug. Which bug? The header looks ugly. So name of the branch can be fixing ugly looking header branch. So
I understand actually, like everything in Git is everything like
everything is a branch. Yeah.
Whatever you pull, everything is a branch.
Yeah.
But what I was confused, like in Subversion they didn't have any quick solution or better solution for merging. Whenever you have to merge manually because the automated process was your fault.
Git's automated process is really fast and efficient. This is not saying like there hasn't been any cases of conflicts, but conflicts on those cases where it's like obvious there will be conflicts if I'm changing at the same point of same file to developers.
This is the same thing for SVN as well.
Yeah, SVN as well, but Git's implementation is way better. Like during the last
my question was actually like it does. Whether it helps in that situation.
It helps. It helps better than Subversion. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, please. I have 3 questions.
Hello.
I'll take his call first, then yes, please.
Git is installable in Linux, but it is installable in Windows too? Or?
It is not recommended, but there are ways around to it. Like there is a project called Cygwin, C-Y-G-W-I-N. It is actually a layer on top of the Windows kernel that you are using. So if you are using a Windows kernel, say like Windows XP or Windows 2000 or something like that, if the native kernel supports it, the Cygwin can really install Git into the file system. So what we will be doing, you will be actually using an emulated version of Git. You won't be getting the same performance that if you would have used Git in a Linux environment or a Solaris environment or a macOS environment, but yes, it is usable. But there are performance penalties, obviously.
Okay, so that installation is like different from the Linux.
It is different from the Linux, yeah, because you need to use you need to install Cygwin first into a Windows machine, and on top of Cygwin, you can just click and install Git. It installs currently around 1.4 version of Git.
And like SVN and source control, those have integration tools with like .NET or other IT. So does Git have this kind of facilities like integration with IT? Or?
I would say it's coming into the market at this moment. Git has some of its own GUIs. There is one GUI called Git GUI, Git-GUI, and there is another view called Git-K. The first complex, like chart that I showed you, it was I got it from using Git-K, but I wouldn't say up to the extent of SVN. SVN and CVS, they have much richer tools in terms of GUI, but Git actually helps the user interface of GUI in terms of text mode or the command mode is very enriched. So no, Git, compared to Subversion, Git is still not there for integration with different IDEs.
And how will you compare with like SVN with the Git on internet performance? Like if the sources is like in different place, then what will be the performance penalty difference between Git and SVN?
The network transmission, that's a very good question. See, over here Git, as I said, Git is a distributed source control management system. So whenever you are distributed means like each developer will have his own copy of the source repository in his box. So when I have my own copy of the source repository in my box, I'm not committing over the network, I'm committing in my box. That's like instantaneous, it's like microsecond. But when I commit to my box, it can. The next step is to pass it to to the superior tree in the source code base. So there are ways to do it, but my commit is totally up to me in my own box, and then in a certain time of the day, when I feel like I can just merge it to the core source base, or someone might pull from my core source too. Thank you. And just to add to that question, that actually helps. I'm running out of time. That actually helps, like if you are flying on a plane, you have your whole source code base in your laptop, and you can actually continue doing your codes and try to take a look at the history of the whole source code. I don't think any other like SCM will support that purpose.
But in aeroplane, like laptop business is forbidden, right?
That's debatable. We tend to use it anyway.
Have you called it stupid?
Because the name of Git is stupid, and Linux, many people in the world calls Linux a stupid guy because he's very rude when he's talking. Rude in terms of like he communicates in a very rude way. I don't want to go into details what rude to define rude, but he called it Git. Any other questions?
Source control development team. What source control is for the QA team? Same thing?
Yeah, it can be used actually to control content. So whether we are using it for a development team or whether we are using it for QA team or any other team, that's actually Git actually is transparent to it. But one thing is like there is a learning curve to learn it. So it might take around 1 week or maximum 2 weeks to get the initial hurdle out of it, and then it's a very good tool to utilize for either QA team. And at TheraP over here, the QA team is actually using it into their day-to-day life. They pull from developers and they have their own margin server. They marge it over there and test it themselves. So it's totally integrated into the developer and QA fabric of the development team and the whole company.
What's the performance like when you're dealing with binary data, when it's not just text content? How does it compare with all the other systems you have used?
If it is a binary data, then I think, according to Git, in binary data, it won't be doing any merging or this sort of things. So the performance is actually what the other developers or other people, other Gits, I would say, found in the net is somewhat even better than the native file system's performance. So some of the developers are still thinking to use Git's concept of file system and to develop, like Git wiki or Git blog, this type of things. So I would say the performance can be even better than the native file system. But I think that it pretty much explains that.
Very sorry, actually, we have to stop the Q&A over here. But you're very welcome to log on to sqbd.com mailing list and post your questions there. He's there online, I know, ready to answer all your questions about Git. Right? Thank you very much.